Hi, Ksenija. It's great to have you with us on the podcast today.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Now, I'm excited to speak to you because I don't think we've really talked about systems so much and processes. We've talked about how to manage your time and be productive. And of course, process is a part of that. But I know that's really your passion is helping small businesses to really get that system in place that's going to make everything else simpler and easier and more reliable and consistent for them. So I'm really excited to learn more about what that entails and where to get started. But before we do, how did you get into systems in the first place?
Yeah, it's part of my, let's say, corporate job because I have been in corporate for 10 years, basically in manufacturing companies, and I was quality engineer, quality manager, and we're all about systems and standardization, especially if you know any idea like about ISO 9001. So in order to have good quality and good products, you have to have a solid system which is reliable and reproductive. So but later on, I also started to help my colleagues, some other small business owners, and they said, yeah, we want to be more productive, we want to have a more optimized business, and people are calling me all the time, my employees, and that's why I said, okay, but perhaps ISO 9001, it's not let's say the most beneficial for your company. So I came across this lovely book by David Jennings, and it's called Systemology. So I saw, yes, this is it. This is the user-friendly version for small business owners, in order to systemize their business. Yeah, and that's how I came from the quality management role, which is really in corporate atmosphere, corporate environment, to building systems for small business owners. So I like systems, I like processes, and this is what I do.
I love that. So I understand with a large manufacturing company where they've got lots of moving parts and they have to have that consistent standard
Mm,
and reliability to the work that they do, particularly when they're manufacturing cars and machinery. You don't want it to break down and
yeah.
harm people. But when it comes to a small business, particularly if it's just like one person and a couple of VAs or something, is there enough parts to build any kind of systems around?
Yeah, I believe that, any system is better than no system, because especially when you're like on your own, I think it's really nice that you map down your systems and your processes, how things are done around here. Because I think that each small business owner or an entrepreneur, wants to scale, wants to, have some financial freedom in the end. And of course, in the end, he has to or she has to outsource some of their business. So it's much easier if you have a system already implemented, so some kind of standard operating procedures or some kind of instructions, that this transition, it's much easier and smoother. And it's I think it's more about also that you're reliable, that you have this process written down, and it's easier to implement or onboard someone else to do it if you have written down. Because if everything is in your head, then it becomes quite a challenging task to pass down this knowledge, when your team is growing. And that's, I think, everyone's dream, that they have a team, that they have a solid company, not just like on their own. So that's, I think, it's the basics for having a system, from the early start.
Yeah. So, well, you just mentioned there from an early start. Is there a point you have to reach in your business at which point it makes sense to put systems in place, or do they need to be in place from day one?
I wouldn't say from day one, because I assume that, let's say, when you're starting your business, it can be a little bit chaotic. You're still looking for yourself, you still look for your niche, you're still trying to figure out what you will do, how you will do it, which is your target audience. But at some point, when you have everything set down and you have, let's say, this business canvas already implemented in your strategy, it is a fair good point that you start thinking about, okay, let's start to document things. Perhaps why it's better to start quite early in your journey as an entrepreneur, because you have a little bit more time, and you have the ideas and the process can be quite fresh. Because when you already start to have a team, let's say some teams are like from 5 to 40 people, then it can be quite chaotic, and people tend to call the business owner, ask him or her how this is done, and everything goes through the business owner. So he or she becomes quite a bottleneck in the end. So let's say my ideal time would be quite soon, when you have like everything with your product or your service, and you have like a monthly revenue which is consistent. So that's like a good starting point, even though we don't have a team already. But it will sooner or later, start to grow, and you will have to outsource someone. So as I said, this transition would be quite easier for you. But then the next step is, when you have a team, as I said, from 5 to 40, that's the most ideal time that you start thinking about systems and documenting them. The thing is that, building a system and SOPs, it's not really appealing, because it can be quite time consuming, and the effects are not that quick and quickly evident. But it pays off in the long run. That's really a daunting task. You have to start, but you get the effect, not in 1 month, but you get it in 6 months or 1 year, but you have to start it. And a lot of people are pushing this aside, because as marketing, sales, these buzzwords, this is really appealing. And this is really what is right now a hip momentum around it, and everybody's doing. But yeah, systems are the foundation of business. Well, I would say the marketing is more about outside appearance of the business.
So when it comes to doing your processes, as you said, it's not terribly exciting necessarily.
Yeah.
And lots of entrepreneurs are very creative people. They like starting new things and making that happen. And they're not necessarily the kind of people that like to sit back and reflect and build out a process. So how could you encourage people, or how could people who are listening that might fall into that bracket, like me, who are like, oh, they like the idea of having a system, but actually putting one in place doesn't feel necessarily the top of the priority list. Is there any way that we can make it easy for them, or any first steps that they can just start with, that they will then everything else will follow on from nicely?
Yeah, I advise them. As I said, it's not really creative work, building a system, but it can be really quite fun, but you have to sit down and think about it. One way is really to also outsource this task. Or if you have a team member, that is really into system and is really into details, perhaps, give him or her this task to try to systemize, make it like a force team. But when you're on your own, I would really suggest, just get extra help, because I know that perhaps, you cannot do all by yourself, especially as a business owner. So just hire someone that is able to systemize. And if you're into systems as a business owner, then of course, read the book like Systemology, educate yourself, and there's a ton of useful content. So you can do it by yourself. But otherwise, if you don't have the knowledge, don't have the time, but you want to implement this, then just, I would say, call me or any one of my colleague systemologists, because we know how things are done and we can easily help you.
Yeah. I think that's a big lesson that comes out of this show, is that if you don't have the skills or the motivation to do something, outsource it or ask for help, because getting an expert to come in and help you, they can do in like a couple of hours what
Yeah.
would take you maybe in my case anyway, a few weeks or months of procrastination.
Yeah, and that it's not just with the systems, that's with a lot of things that as a business owner you are faced with, even though if this is marketing or sales, sometimes yes, you can learn, you can find a lot of useful content on the internet, of course, but sometimes it's rather, that the learning curve is a little bit not that wide. You have to ask for help, and I think that's a good lesson for each small business owner and entrepreneur. Just ask people that know. It's much easier, and they will also help you with the pros and cons, because if you are getting the knowledge, if you're educating also yourself, you can also make a lot of mistakes that are preventable if you ask an expert. So external help is always beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. A lesson I've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
So when it comes to systems, is there, for me as someone who's very creative, I I struggled a long time just to get my head around what is a system and what needs to be systematized, if that's a word.
Mhm. Yeah.
Where do you, is there any particular point where you think always start here and then build out from there?
Yeah. So I know that sometimes people don't have really a general idea what the systems are, but this is just, let's say, standard operating procedures. So how things are done around here, whether it's this an issuing an invoice, whether this is, you have sales script somewhere stored, how to write a contract, really, really basic stuff. But the better thing is that you start to think even though you're alone, they start to think in departments. You have like marketing department, you have sales department, you have finance, you have operations. So when you are thinking about systems, start to build also, departments, even though you're a boss of each that department, and that just map down the system or the process, which is, let's say, the money making process. So which process gives you or generates revenue for you. So I would say start with the marketing. How do you do your marketing? How do you do your sales? And how do you execute your operations? So whether that's a service or some product you make. And that's like the start of your of your system. How, if you have some kind of project management, how are steps in the project before you're on board a client till you deliver the service? How do you do sales calls? You have a sales script or not? So that's basically where you should start. And this can be really small activities. You can also write, let's say in the marketing, how to write a good blog post. And this is somewhere you have documented. And it's also a reminder for you when you're writing a blog post, or you outsource perhaps to someone who will do your content for you, that, this is your, let's say, this is your way to do it. This is what you want to achieve. And these are your, let's say, golden rules. And so that, let's say, the execution of this task is not led to some kind of, chance. So everything is in alignment with your way of working, how you want things to work in the end.
Mm. And when you're working through a system, and you mentioned that it takes a little bit of discipline, a bit of time, a bit of thought, and it doesn't have an immediate outcome. Well, unless you're immediately going to employ someone, perhaps. But what's the big upside? How can we sell this to the audience? You have to have a system. What's the thing that's worth putting in that effort for? What can they really expect to get from their system?
Really, it depends on the strategy. If they want to be a freelancer, and they don't want to scale, I have enough work with the current projects. I just want to have, a business for me. But when they are thinking about growing the business, I want to have a company. I want to have this many employees in the end. I want to have this kind of revenue. So when they're thinking about expanding, they have to think about systems, because in the end, when you have like 5 employees, that's like a lovely family. Everything is communicated, everything is done. So they are on a small location, so everything's really perfect. But when you are growing, and sometimes if you have a good product or service, you can run quite rapidly. You're just getting additional help. You get a new employee, and in the end, you have like 40 or 50 employees and no system. And this can be quite chaotic. So, as I said, all the decision making goes through the business owner. So, in the end, it happens like business owner cannot take a vacation or a day off without people calling them and running through ideas with him or her. So that, I think, it's really important. It's just about how big you're willing, or how big you will go. Are you willing to scale? How big your idea of business is. If you want to have a huge company, if you want to go internationally, then you have to have a system, because then you'll have a good onboarding process. You will have, people will not be overstressed. People will always know where to return if they'll have any questions. So, how, someone will go on a vacation and somebody will substitute this employee, and it can say, okay, how do I invoice this invoice? I have it in the system. So you have the step there. So he or she returns to the system, so the documenting system, and just says, yeah, this is how we do it. I don't need to call, I don't know, Lisa to her vacation and say how, you invoice an invoice. So that is really dependable on how big you want to go with your company. Or if you want to grow, in order to scale, you need a system. Otherwise, it's really just a hot mess, and it can be quite daunting.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And it as you say, sometimes businesses can scale quite quickly. I remember my first company I worked for, when I was I think I was 21 at the time.
Yeah.
It was a startup, and when I started, we were 20 people, and when I left 4 years later, we were 250.
Yeah.
And internationally, we started off in one small office, and then suddenly we were kind of like elbow to elbow with people. When you had, my beautiful big office suddenly became like 10 people crammed in. It was a very different environment. So yeah, these things can go really quickly.
Yeah, it can. So that's why I say, you have to think about system from the early start, and then you will know as a business owner when it's like the best time to start. But systems are foundation, as I said. It gives you some solidity. It gives you some structure, and it also prepares you for success. Because what do usually people do, even though we heard a lot of times success stories about startups, and people are buying startups, but when they come, the potential buyers, they always check how, let's say, sustainable or how stable the business is, because sometimes a business can succeed solely on the business owner. If you take the business owner out of the equation, the company can collapse. So that is why important that we have a structure, that we have a system, that it can run even without this kind of key employees. And that is also when people are trying, to retire or pass, let's say, the business to their sons or daughters, or even at the end, if they want to sell it, they have to have the system made that the company can run without the business owner. So that is really important, and people sometimes forget about that step.
Yeah, and I think most people start their business for some kind of freedom and
Yeah,
control, and if you don't have the system, then I guess you never get that. And that's not common, is it? Well, it's not uncommon, I should say, to see business owners who are just working around the clock, because
yeah.
they, as you say, they can't take that break without people calling them, or
Mm,
they feel that, oh, everything will collapse if I'm not there,
yeah,
and maybe it would if they haven't
yeah.
got things set up properly. So when it comes to creating a system, is there a system for creating a system, or like a particular piece of kit or tool that you need to do that? Or can you just start very simply with pen and paper or something?
Uh, yeah, you just have to start. I think that's like the most important. But as I said, in this book, Systemology, it really gives you a good, let's say, method, where to start. It's actually really simple. You need the business owner, you need someone in the company that knows, let's say, the specific process or department activities. But then is the initial start is just Excel file, really simple. And then some kind of software that allows you to document via video, or just recording, so how things are done. So this is really simple, and it's more about the knowledge that we as systemologists, the ones who are doing systems, know how to extract this knowledge out of business owners and employees. So but it's you don't need any fancy softwares or any fancy kind of tools or gadgets. It's more about pen and paper, but then the method, the knowledge, how to extract this, let's say, this SOPs out of the people who are doing it.
And how do systems work in your business? Was that the first thing you did, was your systems, or are you a bit like the cobbler whose children run around with no shoes?
Yeah, you can say that. I'm trying to write as many systems by myself right now, also. But as I said, because I am in an early stage and still, trying to see, will I be a freelancer and by my own, or will I have a team? So I started to document some basic system, but I don't have everything documented because I'm still growing as myself as a business owner. But yes, I do have a software. I do have, let's say, prepared the departments within my business, and I'm starting to document it. But because I understand, the opportunity and the importance of that.
Mm. And you mentioned earlier that it's never really too soon to start documenting your systems. Is
Mm.
there ever a point where it's too late?
It's never a point that it's too late. I wouldn't say that, but it gets harder and harder. So I think when you miss that magic number of 5 to 40 employees, you can systemize, but it doesn't take you, let's say, 6 months to, or less, but it can be, I don't know, 2 years or even more. It's never too late, but the amount of work is getting bigger, and much daunting process.
I guess it's perhaps at that stage, it's not just about creating the system, but also about then changing the culture so people actually use the system.
Yeah, also that. But that's with everything what you implement, it's more about saying, this is how we do things around here. It's the same with, building a vision, building a mission, strategy. If you say we are having a system, we are doing this, and you have to be really strict about not just with the system implementing, with this kind of systems thinking, but with any change you implement in your company. And what is even more important, it always, every change, every shift in company culture starts from the top, so with the business owner or the CEO. So if that's like, this is how things are done here, we have to be then also really strict and really, consistent, because with every change that you implement, I know that it's much easier to go to your old ways, because you can cut some slack in the end, but you're just sabotaging yourself in the end. So even with systematization or with any other new approach, you have to have consistency and just return back to basics. Like, this is how we do it. Okay, it was quicker, but look, you're cutting, some corners. That's not okay. We have to do this as we agreed.
Yeah. Turning it into a discipline, and as you say, just the way we do things here.
Yeah.
From your personal experiences of building your business, is there anything that has really surprised you along the way that you hadn't quite expected, or any, like maybe a good thing or not so good thing?
Yes. I knew, that starting my own business would be quite challenging. And I knew that perhaps I would get, mixed feelings from my, let's say, surroundings or my family, or I don't know, my acquaintances or friends. But I didn't realize that, let's say, my head would be the worst enemy of mine. Because when you're starting, and I think this is quite female attributive, you have doubts, constant doubts. Am I good enough? Will I make enough money and provide for my family? And then, also sometimes you have all this freedom, because you have to allocate the time by yourself, and you tend also to procrastinate a little bit too much. So I always say, I can be really strict boss, but super lazy employee. So that's always some kind of battle within yourself. And of course, this kind of uncertainty, especially when you're at the beginning of your journey. This summer, let's say in July and August, you prepare yourself that you'll have this kind of more dead or dry season. But still, it is surprising, that business just stops a little bit and there's not a lot of activity going on. So that is, let's say, the most difficult part of being a business owner. So really constant struggles with yourself, because if you have time, then you tend to overthink a lot. And when you're overthink, then you just, put yourself through difficult challenges, and you get some obstacles in your head that are not even relevant or even there. So I think that, people, especially females, should be aware that, just stick to it, listen to your guts, and just don't overthink, and really, trust in yourself. So I would say this is, let's say, the best lesson I've learned, that sometimes you can be your worst enemy in that case.
Yeah. And often even you listen to the voice in your head and it's holding you back, but you know it isn't true. And it's going to be difficult, as you say, there's that consistent battle going on sometimes. So I think mastering your mindset is a really important thing for all entrepreneurs and business owners.
Yeah.
take seriously and embrace it and do it on a consistent basis. I know I started working on my mindset towards the end of my first business,
mm,
and it was a real game changer. And then the more I got into it, it was just revolutionary. It's like all the things that I've been holding back over were nonsense, really. And I was like,
yeah.
oh,
Mm,
I don't have to think this way. I can choose to think this way instead. Okay. And it was really that easy, but it
mm,
was being aware of it and being aware that I could choose and I could opt for different ways of thinking and reframe things. And, I didn't have to listen to this inner critic. And in fact, I've
mm.
learned how to turn it into a inner cheerleader, and it's been really helpful sometimes. But yeah, I love that you brought up the mindset piece, because it's a constant challenge for all of us, I think.
Yeah, yeah, true. It's really just, I think that you're aware that this is normal. In fact, this is normal, that you have this constant battle, and that you have the tools to overcome it. You just have to listen yourself, because when you're aware of the problem, you then also have the solution. You can find the solution in the end. So this is normal. We all have this, as you said, inner critic, and that is really important, especially when you are starting a business, when you're just on this new entrepreneurial path, and there's no safety net, or you're totally out of the comfort zone, and yeah, perhaps you have a supportive surroundings, perhaps you don't have a supportive surrounding. So really just be true to yourself, and whatever feeling you have, it's totally normal. And just try to you know read a lot. I think that's really good. Read books on this topic, uh, write, record your feelings, record your thoughts, and learn on this, and you will overcome this kind of problems within your head eventually, and you will just thrive in the end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It really is the probably the biggest battle. And I think surrounding yourself by other people as well, who can help raise you out of that when you have those down moments as well, can be really helpful
Mm,
and there to inspire you. And I
yeah,
like it as well that you said not to overthink and trust
yeah,
in your instincts, because I think sometimes we discount our instincts, forgetting that it's actually an accumulation of all of our knowledge and experiences, and we can absolutely trust it.
yeah. I think it's really the best thing is just sometimes you have to listen to your guts. Um, it can be, yeah, stressful and a little bit, yeah, out of your comfort zone, but you know, you as a individual, you had a lot of different experience, and this gut is just telling you to go in that direction. And you made a decision, because if you tend to overthink, you also hesitate with the decision. You're just, pacing in which direction you go. You have to choose one direction. And if it was wrong, because it can happen sometimes, it's not that just like, oh, I made a bad decision, how foolish I am. No, you didn't make a bad decision. You made a decision which was at that moment, with your experience at that time, the best decision you could make. And that is the, let's say, the learning process. And this is, let's say, one takeaway for everyone who might be listening this, that really just there's no bad decision. It was just decision made at one point of the time which looked the best. But if you would go back, you would decide differently. But that's like a new experience for the future decisions.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, there's no wrong decisions. They're just different ways you can learn
Yeah.
the right path to take. And sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. It doesn't really matter, as long as
Mhm.
we take those lessons into the future with us, then
Yeah,
we're always growing and getting stronger.
true, true.
Mm. So you've shared just so much information. I've just really loved getting inspired around systems and mindset and everything. Is there any other advice that you'd like to share with the listeners that perhaps we haven't touched on?
Um, Regarding system, really just also with this, there's no wrong way, yeah, but I don't know how to tackle the system. I don't have the time, and the systems are boring, and the systems might kill our creativity, They won't. It's just, start open, I don't know, a Word document and start writing things down. There's no wrong way to start. Because when you have something written down, it's easier also to it gives you reflection, it gives you another perspective, and you can also optimize. So there's no wrong way with the systems building. It's just, as I said, you make a decision and you start, and then you can change it or tweak it a little so bit. So that is, let's say, also one key takeaway about building the system. So building the foundation of your company, of how things are done around here. What is it say? What is your, what are your basics in a business? What do you want to achieve? How things are done right here, around here, and just start writing things down. You can use bullet points, you can use flow diagrams, whatever you would like, whatever suits you, but at least start.
Yeah, I love your point there about creativity, because I remember my first experience of Toastmasters. I don't know if you've
Mm-hmm.
ever been. It's
Yeah.
a public speaking club, and when you go, you're presented with this agenda, and I picked it up and was like, what? It's a 90-minute meeting, and yet you have a whole A4 page, and like every 2 minutes is like, then we do this, then we do that, then so
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh my goodness. And I just, at that moment, I thought maybe I should just leave. This doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem like my kind of thing. And I was expecting it to be very rigid and everything. But I very quickly learned, once we got stuck into the meeting, that actually, because it was all clearly documented, nobody had to think. No one
Yeah.
had to think, oh, what's going to happen here? Who does what next? And so it was very efficient. There was no time wasted, and everyone could just really relax. So in fact, it seemed to increase people's creativity,
Yeah.
because they knew, okay, well, these are all the boundaries that we have. That's that sorted. Let's get on with it and just have a lot of fun. And as you say, whoever was running the meeting, because with that club everyone takes it in turns to run the meeting, you
Yeah.
have that clear system, and then it just works and it's easy. No one has to overthink, because the thinking has already been done before. So you just come. And so I thought that was interesting, that your point on creativity, that actually, from that experience at least, it seems to enhance your creativity because it gives you more mind space.
Mm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree, because especially as you said, Toastmasters, you have the agenda right now, and each week somebody else can take the lead over, so there's no need to overthink, what is the agenda for a day. And that is really also with the system. If you have things written down, then everyone knows how things are done. They are not like, oh my God, how things are done. I don't know. Will I know it? How will I know it? If I won't know it, who will I call? So it gives you, it eliminates you a little bit of this ambiguity. It eliminates a little bit of this stress, unnecessary stress of a task you haven't done before. And it just gives you, let's say, some grounding, and you can be more safer, because you have some ground rules, you have some points, and what is going to happen. And because you know what is going to happen, it gives you a safety, and you can be creative, and you can like focus on creativity. Whereas like it's the same as meetings, there are so many meetings in companies that you get just like invite to the meeting. You have the title of the meeting and no agenda. And there you're like 1 hour you're thinking, okay, I have this meeting. Why am I even invited there? And then okay, you are at that meeting, everyone like 10, 15 people are just looking each other, okay, what is all about? And in the end, there's like 15, 20 minutes of just discussing what the meeting's all about. And then, okay, everyone says, yeah, okay, I need to look into that. I have to check some, data in order. And then in the end, they just agree on another meeting. So it's just wasteful time. But if you have an agenda, if you have a system that you could prepare, you could come prepared to this meeting, and everything would be resolved in 15 minutes. And now they were just sitting 10 to 15 people there for 1 hour and just, have a lot of questions of what the meeting's all about. So it doesn't take or kill creativity. It also gives you some not boundaries, but just, some comfort, I think, in the end. So that's why systems are important, because it eliminates a little bit of this uncertainty, which we have now quite a lot in our world. And it's just some basics that you can return to whenever you have questions and whenever you have doubts,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love all that. It's really like started changing the way I look at systems, because being a creative and someone not necessarily the most disciplined, I've always avoided systems, but now seeing how it's really the foundation that's going to give you that time freedom, give you the opportunity to focus and get the most important things done, to stop overthinking and duplicating things and give you more creativity, then you think, wow, yeah, I want to do systems now.
Yeah, because I know that systems not been marketed, and a lot of people don't know about it as we do, let's say, in the manufacturing environment. But yeah, it gives you some stability. It gives you some just some framework to really work and rely on. And in the end, it produces constant, quality products or services. It gives you some reliability also for your clients. And it gives you, stability for a client, because whenever they will work with you, they will get the same outcome, so it won't be like, I don't know, Kinder Surprise, whenever working with you, what kind of toy will I get? It depends on the day, it depends on the mood of a business owner. But, this is how things are done here. And this is our way of working. So that's why our systems are important. It's not something rigorous or, as we said, killing creativity, but just gives you a structure and a way, a roadmap to how we work.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, Ksenija, thank you so much for sharing all of these great insights with us and some of your personal experiences. And I know that you're happy to spend some time. So anyone who's listening to the show who's curious about how to get started with systems in their business, Ksenija has offered to give you a consultancy call just to help you get started and give you some perspective there. So I'll drop the link in the show notes.
Lovely.
But for anyone who can't, perhaps out on the run, listen to it in the car and they can't access the show notes at the moment, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, the best way, I think, it's LinkedIn. I'm the only Ksenija Frelih there, so I'm easy to find. And also via email. I hope also Melita will share in the notes. So, just find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite present there, so that's like the easiest way. Otherwise, you can also check my webpage, which is www.animore-institute.com. So that's like where you can find me. And otherwise, look in Google, you'll see me.
Great. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you for inviting me. It was really a pleasure to chat with you, and all the best wishes to you.
Thank you.